the night before the flood, which was a Wednesday night, I was at a, interestingly enough, climate change meeting at my church. And the meeting was going on, and the rain was coming down, and harder and harder, and finally in sheets of rain. And I sat there thinking, why don't they end this meeting and let us go?
We knew it had been raining for 2 or 3 days. We were watching our threshold of our patio because the water was creeping higher and higher, but it never got over the threshold, so we thought, this is fine, we'll go to bed.
We were watching. We were out of the apartment just watching around.
Well, yes, and then it really started to rain, and Libby suggested that I move the car, and I didn't do it. But about 2 hours later, it began to pour, and we're right over the garage, and I could see the water coming over the ramp on the side of the garage about a foot above the ramp.
It rained, of course, all the next day, and I was piling laundry and towels and everything I could find against my patio door because the rain was beginning to seep in. Not pour in, but just seep in, and I thought, well, that's going to be my problem right there, and I've got to keep that dry as much as I can.
And I was just getting ready to take off my brace and get to bed when the lights went off and the siren, the alarm began to sound out in the hall. There was a flashing red light, piercing siren, and we knew there was an emergency, but we didn't know what it was.
Sometime during that evening, maybe between 7 and 8 or whatever, I don't remember the siren, oddly enough, but Chuck Wellman, our manager of operations or maintenance or whatever, came racing down the hall of our part of the building, which is Central South, and yelling, everybody out, everybody out, everybody out, now, now. And it was kind of, it did create panic in me, because he sounded like he meant business.
And it was just filling the garage there. And so it was too late to go down and do anything about that. So I looked a few minutes later at the stairway at the end of the hallway, and there was about 2 feet of water there. But I was looking all around and went back maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, and it was almost up to the top of the stairway. So I ran around and banged on all the doors on this end of the building, and one man didn't believe me and had to go out and look himself before they would evacuate their apartment.
As soon as we got to the door, we realized there was water in the hallway, and we heard what we thought was one of our favorite maintenance men say, get to a higher level, get to a higher level.
And so the hardest part at that point was sloshing our way through the hallway to get to the nearest staircase, because the elevator had been shorted out. And so it took us a little time to work our way down to where the stairwell was, and then we could get up to the next floor, which was dry, and everything was okay at that point.
We are between 2 staircases, but the emergency doors slammed shut that barred us from the closest stairway, so we went away from that because there was another staircase, and it took us a while to get there. And then it's difficult for Bill to climb stairs, but he did it, and we trudged down that hallway the long way to the central lobby where people were congregating.
The electricity failed. The whole place went dark. And by now, it was dark. It was dark. And my most vivid impression is all the people from assisted living and maybe some from healthcare were everywhere, all over the vestibule, all over the foyer, the outside the library, and there were these wheelchairs, beds, all draped in white blankets, I presume, and no light, no electricity. And my most vivid recollection that I'll never forget, never, is of these ghostly forms all over everywhere I looked, in the dark. And it was like something out of a nightmare, really.
4 days after the flood, Frasier moved all of us who were refugees from the garden level, and there were on the order of 12 of us, over to Flatirons Terrace of Golden West, moved us and the furniture and clothing that we needed to stay over there, and we were there for 2.5 months.
It was announced that we were being moved to Flatirons Terrace, and that was such a relief to know that there was a place to go. I have a niece who lives here, but their bottom level of their house was flooded. So that wasn't an appropriate destination for me. They had their own problems. So that was a big relief to get over to Flatirons.
Management did a great job and found us an apartment at Golden West, and we moved there, and which is really nice. It wasn't home, but we were there 2.5 months,
But to go back to the 4 days we were in the apartment after the flood, everything was fine except it was squashy on the floor. But I could have stayed here, and none of our furniture was hurt at all.
Well-
Because it just came in and came out that night.
Well, they moved all our furniture out, and they did a pretty good job, but a couple of things got gouged in the moving, but that was it, basically.
So we were out for, what,
2.5 months.
2.5 months.